so strong and still from where I've hidden. I cannot hear your voice above my will, but still you listen. And all the while you call me to your grace. All that I undid face, lead me to the end of myself. Take me to the edge of something greater. I'm looking out beyond this great unknown, though I can't see it. One day I'll see the place you call my home. Lord, I'll be near it. And all the while you call me to your grace. All that I undid fades. Lead me to the end of myself. Take me to the edge of something greater. Lead me to the end of myself. Take me to the edge of something greater. I'm standing on the great frontiers of your love, of your love. You have overcome my deepest fears with your love, with your love. I am standing on the great frontiers of your love, of your love. You have overcome my deepest fears with your love, with your love. Yeah. Lead me to the end of myself. Take me to the edge of something greater. Lead me to the end of myself. Take me to the edge of something greater.
All right. Good morning, Golden Corner Church. And you may be sitting there right now, there in your home, and you're thinking, man, this looks a little different. Well, you're right. It is very different. As a matter of fact, it's Thursday night. We're here at the church building, and we're excited because we're about to do church. We're having a trial run of our live services that we're planning coming up on September 13th. We are working the bugs out. So you're going to watch this recording, but we're doing it all. The worship team's all here. The media team's all here. Ronnie's here. He's going to preach. And we're all here together, and we're about to have some fun. We're so glad you decided to join us this morning. Be sure to continue to engage in everything that we're doing, man. We want you to worship this morning with us. We want you to be connected in every way possible. So I just want to encourage you, man. We're excited. We're excited about what's coming up on the 13th. Worship with us today. I'm going to go out here and find me a chair, and I'm going to sing to the top of my lungs. You do the same thing. We love you. We'll see you soon.
Lost, but he brought me in. Oh, his love for me. Oh, his love for me. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. Last he has ransomed me, his grace runs deep. While I was a slave to sin, Jesus died for me. Yes, he died for me. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free.
So I love this next song that we're fixing to do this morning, because every time we sing it, I'm reminded of one thing, and that's this: God's with you. God's with us. No matter what storm you may be facing, no matter what storm may be ahead, you can stand knowing that at the end of it, you're going to stand in victory because God's with you and God's got it. What peace in knowing that. What peace in knowing that we have a Father that we can just turn all our problems, all our issues to. He's a good God. He's worthy to be praised. So this morning, let's continue to worship Him.
The weapon may be formed, but it won't prosper. When the darkness falls, it won't prevail. 'Cause the God I serve knows only how to triumph. My God will never fail. My God will never fail. I'm gonna gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. There's power in the mighty name of Jesus. And every war he wages, he will win. And I'm not backing down from any giants, 'cause I know how this story ends. Yes, I know how this story ends. A victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. Come on, you take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. Yeah. You take the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. You take the enemy meant for evil, you turn it for good. You turn it for good. You take what the enemy meant for evil, turn it for good. You turn it for good. Amen. Let's pray together. God, I just want to thank you. God, thank you for being God and showing up as we're doing this worship. God, thank you. And I just pray right now that anyone that's watching online, God, maybe they're at home, maybe they're at work, maybe they're in their car. God, I pray that they felt you in a real way.
God, that they worship you. God, that it wasn't just lyrics that we were singing, that we were saying, God, but we drew close to you during this worship. God, that's my prayer. God, thank you for Ronnie, God, and I know you've put something on his heart all week, God, and I pray that you just speak through him in a mighty way. God, that you use him this morning, and we just continue to glorify you. You are a great God, and we love you. It's in your name. Amen.
Well, hey, everybody, and welcome to Go to Corner Church online. I know what many of you are asking. Ronnie, what in the world have you done now? Well, the last thing I remember is looking at Lynn and saying, "You can't make me." And everything after that is a blur, kind of a painful blur. I'm so glad you're here, because I think today I can help you keep moving in the direction that God has established for your life. You see, your life journey has brought you to a fork in the road. God is leading you to do something, and you're currently deciding what you're going to do. Are you going to follow Him or not? Now, there's a big part of you that's acting as a cheerleader and going, "Yes, do it. Yes, do it." But there's another part of you that's making a pretty convincing argument against that, citing reasons like it's too costly, it's too risky, man, it's borderline impossible for you to do. I think I'd back off of that. Well, before you make your final decision, I want to share a story with you from the Bible. It's found in the Old Testament book of 1 Kings, chapter 17, verse 2 through 16. We're going to read some verses together in just a moment. But before we do, let me kind of set the stage and tell you what is happening. We're talking about the Israelites, who were, by the way, God's people. They knew Him. They belonged to Him. But for 60 solid years, they've been in the process of defecting. They're turning away from the true God, and they're worshiping a host of false gods. And on this list of false gods, at the top of the list there was this god referred to as Baal. And the reigning king of Israel was a guy named Ahab. He was married to a pagan woman named Jezebel, and they're really encouraging this trend away from God. So in that kind of a situation, what do you imagine God would want? God wanted His people to turn back to Him. So he had a plan. And in this plan, He was going to prove that Baal was not a god at all. And on the other hand, He was going to prove that He alone was God. And how was He going to do that? He decided to stop the rain from falling for as long as it would take. Why rain? Because people believe Baal controlled the weather and the rains, and therefore their prosperity. So God's like, I'll make a point. I'll stop the rain. And it won't rain again until I say it's going to rain. I'll prove that I'm God. Now, why was He doing this? Not necessarily to punish them, but to convince them that you need to turn back to me. Now, He let a guy in on what he was doing, a young man named Elijah. He shared with him what he was doing, and then He gave him a very tough assignment. He said, you know, this is not going to work unless everybody knows what I'm up to. So I want you to go marching in to the capital city of Israel, Samaria. I want you to find Ahab, king of Israel. I want you to get in his face, and I want you to tell him exactly what's going on, that your God's going to withhold the rain. It's not going to rain again until you say so. I'll tell you what. That's exactly what Elijah did. He found Ahab. He gave him a very succinct, kind of in-your-face, scathing message. And I believe that as the last word was coming out of Elijah's mouth, God began to speak to Elijah. Look what he said. Chapter 17, verse number 2, it said, "Then the Lord said to Elijah, go to the east and hide by Kerith Brook, near where it enters the Jordan River. Drink from the brook, that's reasonable, makes all the sense in the world, and eat what the ravens bring you, for I have commanded them to bring you food." I want you to notice this. God is leading Elijah. And he's leading him very clearly. He's telling him what to do. Go. He's telling him when. Go right now. He's told him where to go. You got to go to the Kerith Ravine. It's in the east. As a matter of fact, you're going to be, a little piece up from the confluence of the Kerith Brook and the Jordan River. So he lays all that out to him, but then he says to him, makes him a promise. So he tells him, this is what I want you to do. He's very clear with it. He makes him a promise. Tell you what I'm going to do. Now, you can drink from the brook to your field, and I'm going to have the ravens bring you in food on a regular basis. Now, I don't know about you. I try to put myself in his place, and I got to believe that if that's the instructions that God was giving me, I got some questions. Like, God, what kind of food? What's on the menu? Where are these ravens going to get the food? What if they can't find food? What if they just don't bring the food? I mean, God, what's our plan B here? I gotta believe I would have been filled with questions. I would need some reassurance. What about Elijah? What did he do? Look with me in verse number 5. The Bible said, so Elijah just did as the Lord told him. No questions, no negotiating. And he camped beside Kerith Brook, east of the Jordan. The ravens brought him bread and meat each morning and evening, and he drank from the brook. So here he is. This lasted about 6 months. 6 months, there was this, stream of water to drink from. Clear, pristine, cool. Ravens bring him in bread and meat every morning, every evening. And he's living it up. Well, what's going on? No rain's falling. This went on for like 6 months. So they entered into a serious drought. And as you can imagine, in time, the brook dried up. He had nothing to drink. At that point, what happened? Look with me, verse number 8. Then the Lord said to Elijah, go. Well, look at how clear and how specific these instructions are. And live in the village of Zarephath, near the city of Sidon. I've instructed a widow there to feed you. Now, I got to be honest with you. As I hear this, I just see all kind of problems with this. I mean, at this point in time, Ahab, the king of Israel, has put a contract on Elijah's head. People are looking for him everywhere with the intent of killing him. Now, God is telling him, you got to come out of hiding. It's going to be about a 90 to 100-mile trek through open country. And I'm telling you, you are fair game to every bounty hunter out there. So he's taking a great risk. So that's a problem. But he's telling him to go to Zarephath. Zarephath was a coastal village near Sidon. The significance of that, Sidon was Jezebel's hometown. So what God is saying is, I want you to hide out on the devil's front porch, so to speak. That's where you're going to be the safest. And then he tells him, I've instructed a widow there to take care of you. Widows were notoriously poor, and in the event of a drought and a famine, they were generally the first ones to starve to death. And so God is saying, you're going to go, and this widow is going to provide for you. Here again, I got to be honest with you. I got questions. God, why do you want me to take such a risk? God, is there not a better place for me to hide? I mean, I'm going to be right there at the footsteps of the devil's headquarters, and that's where you want me. And this widow, I mean, how much she got on hand? What kind of supplies has she got? How are you going to resupply her? I mean, I don't understand. How did he respond? Look at verse number 10, very first statement. So he went to Zarephath. No questions asked. No complaints. No negotiating. Just did it. So he makes his journey. He comes to the town gate of Zarephath, and there's a lady there who's collecting firewood. Don't ask me how in the world he knew this, but he suspected she's the one. So he approached her, and I believe he was kind of doing like a pilot run, a test. And he said, "Excuse me, ma'am, if you don't mind, would you bring me something to drink? Just maybe a little cup of water." She obliged. She turns to leave. He said, "Oh, yeah, and by the way, what about bringing me a little piece of bread too?" Well, this got her attention. She stopped dead in her tracks. And she turned. She apparently recognized that he was a Hebrew. I believe she recognized this was the guy that God was talking to her about. And she said, "Let me just be completely honest with you. As surely as the Lord your God lives, I swear to you, I'm telling you the truth. I don't have any bread, not a slice, nothing. All I've got at my house is a little flour in a jar and a little oil, enough to make a small cake of bread. That's why I'm gathering firewood. I'm going to go home and make this bread. My son and I are going to eat it. And that'll be our last meal. And then we're going to starve to death." Now at this point, you're Elijah. How do you respond to that? How do you think the preacher would respond to this woman's situation? Would you think he would go, "Oh, ma'am, I'm so sorry"? I mean, instead of me asking you to help me, I should have stepped forward and offered to help you. I just didn't understand your situation. You know what Elijah said to her? He said, "Don't you be afraid." He recognized immediately what was going on. Don't you be afraid. Afraid of what? Afraid to do what God is leading you to do. Remember, God told Elijah, I've already instructed her. I've already told her that what she is to do. He's saying, don't you be afraid to do what God is telling you to do. He says, as a matter of fact, just to reassure you, let me share with you God's promise to you. This is what God is promising. God promises that if you'll take care of me, He'll take care of you. God is promising that if you'll take care of me out of your limited resources, God's going to take care of you and your family out of His unlimited resources until the drought and the famine are over. So what does she do? Look at verse 15. So she did as Elijah said, and she and Elijah and her family continued to eat for many days. As a matter of fact, it was 3 years. Every day, at least twice a day. There was always enough flour. Wait a minute, I got to back up. There's this phrase here that I just absolutely love. There was always enough. There was always enough flour and olive oil left in the containers, just as the Lord had promised through Elijah. So she went, she made Elijah some bread. She goes back to the pantry. You know, I'm assuming that she's assuming that these jars are now empty. No, they're not. They got the exact same amount that they had in them before she made the bread for Elijah. She cooked a meal for herself and her son. They ate. And you know what they did? They did this over and over and over again for 3 years. Now, what's the lesson in this story? Here's what I've learned. Where God guides, He provides. God was at work in Israel. He had a plan. He had a plan. I'm going to stop the rains from falling. He had a purpose. I'm going to prove beyond any shadow of a doubt, Baal is not a God at all. I alone am God. He had a purpose. In doing this, I want to bring my people back to me. Now, in the context of this corporate plan, God had a personalized plan for an old country boy named Elijah. He had some things he was going to require Elijah to do. Some steps that he was going to ask Elijah to take. And when the time for action was right, God would reveal these steps to Elijah one step at a time. First step was, of course, we learned this last week, pray that it stops raining. Elijah took step one. Then God shared step two. Go confront Ahab. Elijah took the next step. He took that step, he got step 3. Now go hide in the Kerith ravine. He took that step, he got the 4th step. Now go to Zarephath. And we're going to wrap this thing up for the time being there. God is there. I see a parallel here, and that is this. God is at work in our world. We know that. What is His plan? Listen, that's way above my pay grade. I don't think I can explain his plan. What is his purpose? I just know this. God is calling people to himself. And I think in many ways, he's calling people back to himself. Now, in the context of God's corporate plan for our world, God has a personalized plan for each one of us. There are things he's going to require us to do. There are steps he's going to ask us to take. And when the time for action is right, he will reveal this step to us. His plan, one step at a time. Now, when he reveals this step that we're to take, what do? We do it. No questions asked. No negotiating, no bartering. He speaks, we act. He commands, we obey. He guides, we follow willingly, completely, and immediately, right? Some of you do. Most of us may or may not. We may cooperate, maybe we won't. Why is that? Because when God reveals to us a step that he wants us to take, there's a real good chance that in order to take that step, we got to pay a price. Obedience could cost us. I'll give you the example of Elijah. What had obedience cost him? Well, one thing it cost him his freedom. And I guess you could say it cost him his life. He couldn't go back home. He couldn't go to his house. People were looking for him. He couldn't go to the bowling alley. He couldn't go to the golf course. He couldn't go out and eat. I'm telling you, obedience had a price tag for Elijah, and sometimes it does for us. I think there are other times where God reveals the step he wants us to take, and great risk accompanies it. God told Elijah, go confront Ahab. Ahab is a prophet murderer. He's a proven murderer. He answers to nobody. He can do anything he wants to anybody he chooses with no repercussions. He's got an entire army at his disposal. Yeah, it was risky. And then God tells Elijah, come out of hiding, walk 100 miles in open country with everybody looking for you, everybody wanting to kill you. There was risk involved. Camp out right here, in the front door of Sidon. And then there are times that God gives us a step to take, and this is not an exaggeration. What he's leading us to do is impossible for us to do. Impossible. For example, Elijah, go down and, spend about 6 months in the Kerith Ravine. How does Elijah survive that without a miracle? He couldn't have been frugal enough, clever enough. Without a miracle, he dies in the Kerith Ravine. He tells him, go to Zarephath, and I got a widow there that's going to take care of you. How does he survive that apart from a miracle? Survival in the ravines, survival at Zarephath was absolutely impossible. If that was going to happen, God would have to do something. And here's the way it works for us. When God finally reveals that step, take this step, there's a cost or there's risk, or it's an utter impossibility. So you know how we humans often respond to that? I won't. I won't pay the price. I won't take the risk. Or we go, I can't. That's absolutely impossible for me to do. Yet Elijah, each and every time, responded, I will. I'll do it. No questions asked. I'll do it. What was so different about Elijah? What made him so different from us? I think this, he'd learned a lesson. Where God guides, he provides. Where God guides, he provides. He knew this, that whatever God leads you to do, he's standing on ready to help you do. If he leads you to take a step of action that costs you somewhere down the line, he will bless you in some way that more than makes up for the price you paid. Elijah knew that. Elijah knew this, that if he ever leads you to do something that is risky, he'll provide the protection you need. If he ever leads you to do something impossible, he'll provide the abilities, the wisdom, the resources you need to do what you couldn't do without him. As a matter of fact, when he was talking to the widow, he shared this principle with her. You know, she is afraid, and what did he say to her? He said, it's just like this. Where God guides, he provides. That's what I want you to know. I want you to know that wherever God is guiding you, He's going to make provision for you. Whatever He's leading you to do, He is going to enable you to do. So with that in mind, what do we do? Here's what I'm encouraging you to do. Trust Him. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. I know what He's going to say. He's going to say, obey Him. Well, that's ultimately what we want to do. But we will never obey Him until we trust Him. Did you notice that when God was guiding Elijah, that along with His instruction, He always included a promise? I want you to go to the Kerith Ravine. I want you to hide there. I'm going to make you a promise. The ravens are going to feed you. I've commanded them to do it. I'm going to take care of you. Hey, I want you to go down to Zarephath. You know what? This is what I want you to do, but I'm going to make you a promise. I've already made arrangements. I've already commanded a widow there in that place to take care of you. You know why Elijah would do this stuff? He trusted God. He believed. He just believed that God was... And you think about this. God promised him, I'll take care of you in the Kerith Ravine. Did He? Yeah. God was faithful. I'll take care of you at Zarephath. Did He? Yeah. God was faithful. The thing that kept Elijah going was he believed God. He believed that God was a God that could be trusted. And if He's leading me to do this, He's got my back. He's going to take care of me. He's going to enable me to do this. He's true to His word. If He said He would, He would. I think about the widow, and I see us in her. And when Elijah said, bring me some bread first if you don't mind, she's struggling. She knows she's at that fork in the road and she's got a decision to make. Am I going to do what God is leading me to do or not? And guys, she was on the verge of not doing it. You know why? Elijah nailed it. He said, don't you be afraid. You know what she was afraid of? If I do what God is telling me to do, things aren't going to bode well for me. It's not going to be good for me. It's not going to be good for my family. If I do this, what did Elijah say to her? Don't forget God's promise. God is promising, take care of me. He'll take care of you. You know what? Take care of me. He'll take care of you. And she made a decision to trust God. And that decision to trust God led to the act of obeying God. You know what I fear? I fear that too many times in our life, and I fear that maybe even somewhere out in the future, that we're going to be exactly where this widow was, and we got a decision to make. We know what God wants us to do, but we're so afraid that He's going to let us down that we don't do it. What if she hadn't done this? She would have missed the miracle. She would have missed miracles that happened every day of her life for 3 years. Guys, I do not want you to miss the miracle. I want you to see the ravens coming in every morning and every evening. I want you to see the miraculous, supernatural hand of God all over your life. I want you to see and experience His faithfulness. I want you to go to the pantry every day and see that the flour and oil is at the same level it was the day before and the year before and 2 years before. I don't want you to miss that. I can remember where God really taught me this lesson in a very vivid way. Right out of high school, I went to work for the Singer Company over in Pickens. And I did real well. I was promoted often. And the next thing I knew, I found myself in a management level position. I had 3 crews that worked under me, 3 shifts. I was very comfortable. I knew everything to know about the department. We were making a lot of money. I was well respected. My crews and I, we were like family. And I don't even know why I did this. It's kind of on a whim. I took a postal exam. And I submitted my test score to 3 different post offices. And in time, I get a letter from the Walhalla post office They got a job and they want me to come in for an interview. So I go in the interview and I'm sitting there, we're talking to the postmaster. He said, I want you to understand it's a part-time job. Well, immediately I'm shutting my mind down. I got a wife, I got a family, I got obligations, I got a good job. He said, it's a part-time job. I got you budgeted for 8 hours a week. Thing is, I can't promise you I'll give you 8 hours every week. You want the job? I'm like, nah. He said, well, do this. Think about it. Think about it. Well, I can be honest with you, man. I walked out of there. I didn't even intend on praying about it, honestly. I mean, what was there to pray about? Now, that night, I got myself a surprise. That night, God whispered in my ear and said, take that job. I wish I could tell you I was just like, oh, Elijah, okay. I'll turn him a notice tomorrow. I'll call the postmaster and I'll tell him. I started negotiating. I started telling God all the reasons I could not do that. And this is what he said to me. If you'll take it, I promise you this. You'll never miss a paycheck, never miss a meal, never miss a house payment. I promise you this. I will always get you the hours you need to make a good living. But this is your job and I want you to take this job. So the next day I called them in. I said, I'm coming. Let me work a good notice. These people have been good to me. And I did. For 20 months, I was part-time at the Walla Post Office. And 20 months into it, they offered me a full-time job, and I took it. You know why I took it? To get my hours back down to 40 because these people were killing me. They were working me like a mule. God said, I'll give you hours. Well, he gave me plenty of hours, 40 hours and then some. You know what I learned? God's faithful. You can trust him. Sooner or later, he's going to lead you to do something that looks so risky, so illogical, so impossible. And then you got a decision to make. Are you going to do what he wants you to do? It boils down to this. Are you going to trust him? Because wherever he leads you to go, whatever he leads you to do, he's going to enable you to do that. I don't want you to miss God's miraculous provision. I don't want you to miss God's powerful and faithful hand in your life. Let me close by saying this. I think I'm talking to one of my single friends. I need to encourage you to do something. You're currently in a toxic relationship. For some time, God's been telling you, walk away from this. As of yet, you haven't done it. You know why? You don't believe God's got anybody out there waiting on you that'll be good to you. I want you to trust God with this. I want you to do what he's leading you to do. I think I'm talking to somebody who's got a job that's sucking the life out of you. It's drained you emotionally, physically, spiritually. It's kind of robbing you from your family and your family from you. Or sometimes God's been telling you, leave that job. Leave it. But you make a good wage and you've crunched the numbers. You're like, I don't see how we can make ends meet if I take a lower paying job. You can trust God. I want you to trust him. I want you to do what it is that he's telling you to do. Whatever it is. Trust him. And obey him. Let me pray for you. God, when you outlined this plan for our lives, it was your intention to lead us step at a time. And as you lead us to teach us about you and your power and your wisdom and your faithfulness, it was your intent to build our faith on the journey. And God, here's my prayer. I don't know who it is that's listening to me today, but they've been standing at this fork in the road for a long time, deciding. I pray that they'll look down the fork you're encouraging them to take and see you and hear you encouraging them, come this way, I'll take care of everything else. I want them to trust you, God, and to follow you. And I want you to transform their experience with you, their experience in life from something very natural and mundane to something supernatural and exciting. I pray they just keep moving.